The camera pans over a mist-laden Ohio valley, a single skeletal tree silhouetted against the bruised sky. A faint, discordant church bell tolls as the voiceover cuts in. He lived longer than anyone should. He remembered more than anyone should. And in the quiet towns of Ohio, he saw things no one would dare speak aloud. Footsteps echo across wooden floors. A door creaks open, revealing empty rooms frozen in decay. Shadows stretch unnaturally along the walls. The audience is immediately pulled into a world where time has bent around a single, impossible man, a former slave who claimed he was born in 1812, and vanished like the memories of a town too, ashamed to remember only after 126 years. This is not a tale of heroism, but of observation, of silent witnesses to horrors the world forgot to catalogue, secret orphanages run by faceless men, church rituals drenched in fear, and families whose walls hid more than laughter. Every creak, every whisper, every stare down the long, darkened hallways of forgotten Ohio houses echoes the same question. What did he see? The camera closes in on an ancient pair of eyes, dim but alert, reflecting flickers of candlelight in a room untouched by time. The voice softens, almost a hiss. Some histories are buried because the living cannot bear them, but he lived, and he remembered. Born into the smoky fields of Ohio in 1812, Jeremiah Holloway was the child of a runaway slave mother and a nameless father lost to the records of time. His earliest memories were smells of scorched cornfields and the soft, rhythmic beat of a church choir that hummed over the cracks of hidden oppression. From childhood, Jeremiah noticed things others ignored. The way men in stiff collars lingered in doorways with their eyes full of calculation. The way children disappeared from orphanages without leaving footprints. The way the town's elders whispered behind closed shutters. By the age of 10, Jeremiah had begun recording the town's invisible currents, the secrets of who owned what, who feared what, and who had died quietly while the town prayed loudly. He had an uncanny ability to listen where others refused. On winter nights, he would sneak into barns to overhear conversations he wasn't meant to hear. He remembered the faces of men and women whose sanity had been fractured by unnamed horrors. Their eyes like wells reflecting fears so deep it changed the shape of reality itself. He did not merely survive, he became a vessel of history's unspoken cruelties. Over the decades, Jeremiah wandered into places the living had forsaken, churches abandoned after scandals too dark to document, orphanages where laughter had been replaced by silence, and houses where the walls themselves seemed to exhale despair. Each step he took was a testament to a history the town would rather forget, a history that lingered in the air like a faint, rancid perfume, whispering that the world was never as innocent as it appeared. By the 1840s, Jeremiah was already a man who could read the past in the tremor of a child's hand, in the hesitation of a priest's blessing, in the unnatural tilt of a widow's head. He was learning to see the invisible, to catalogue the sins hidden beneath Ohio's sleepy, polite exterior. In the late 1830s, a small brick orphanage emerged on the outskirts of the town, ostensibly a refuge for children orphaned by disease or accident. Jeremiah, by then a young man, observed it with unease. Doors were always locked, yet children were seen playing freely within, their laughter too brittle, too sharp. Sometimes, a child would vanish. No one spoke of it. Inside, Jeremiah witnessed a ritual he could not name. The matron of the orphanage would gather the children at midnight, tracing symbols in the dust with trembling fingers, whispering prayers that felt more like commands. The air was thick with something like sulfur and old sorrow. Jeremiah realized these rituals were designed to break memory itself, to erase the pain but also the witness. Each child who disappeared left behind only a hollow echo, a silence that screamed. He began documenting what he could, carving into the beams of his hidden hiding places names, dates, the shapes of fear. Over time, he recognized the pattern. The town's seemingly kind elders were complicit, some directly, others through willful ignorance. The orphanage was not alone. It was a fragment of a much larger network, a lattice of control and repression that stretched across churches, seminaries and family homes where children, servants, and the poor vanished quietly. Jeremiah could not stop the disappearances. All he could do was see, remember, and survive. By the end of the 1840s, he carried the ghosts of dozens of children inside him. He spoke to no one, he trusted no one, and the longer he lived, the more he understood that memory itself was a weapon, one wielded by those who preferred silence over justice. By the 1850s, Jeremiah drifted into the town's seminary, seeking shelter among men devoted to God, but the air there was heavy with something unholy. He observed priests whispering cryptic instructions, binding children to pact of silence. Every sermon was a careful dance of obedience and fear. The sacraments became tools of manipulation. One night, Jeremiah followed a figure into the chapel's underground cryptic, discovering the remnants of rituals that twisted faith into punishment. Chains, rotting candles, and inscriptions in languages no living soul could fully remember covered the walls. Jeremiah realized he had stumbled upon a pattern, repeated across decades. Control was maintained not through violence alone, but through the erasure of memory, the isolation of witnesses, and the cultivation of guilt so deep it could suffocate a soul. These men were architects of unseen horrors, their devotion amassed for the grotesque calculus of suffering. Jeremiah made meticulous notes, hiding them inside hollowed beams. He began to understand his own longevity as a curse, a trait that allowed him to observe, remember, and survive what others could not. Every night, the voices of the vanished children echoed through his dreams, a chorus of warning. Jeremiah began carving symbols into his flesh, a personal diary that no outsider could destroy. He became more than a witness. He became the living memory of the town's hidden sins. And as years passed, he understood that survival required more than hiding. It demanded understanding the machinery of evil itself. In 1863, a fire consumed the town hall, and with it, many of the records of disappearances and secret dealings. Jeremiah, standing across the street, observed men rushing to save ledgers and property, ignoring charred bodies of servants and orphans hidden in the basements. The town's collective conscience, if it had existed, was already buried beneath ashes and smoke. Jeremiah had memorized the town's patterns, yet the fire marked a turning point. The corruption was no longer hidden behind walls, it danced openly in plain sight. Men once respected as pillars of the community were revealed to be opportunists, predators, and ritualists, using the guise of governance to hide a labyrinth of horror. He watched as families salvaged portraits, church leaders salvaged sacred texts, and everyone pretended nothing of consequence had been lost. The smell of burnt paper, mingled with the coppery temps of blood, lingered in the streets for weeks. Jeremiah wandered among the ruins, cataloging the hidden horrors he could see: secret stairwells leading to the sewers, the remains of ceremonial chambers, and the faint whispers of children whose bodies had never been found. It became clear to him that the town's institutions, the seminary, churches, orphanages, and town hall, were bound in an unholy covenant. The secrets were currency, and survival demanded silence. Jeremiah understood that the fire had not destroyed evidence, it had purified the town's conscience, erasing the faintest memory of what had occurred. And in that erasure, he realized, lay the true terror. History is only as honest as the memories we dare to keep. The Civil War tore through Ohio like a festering wound. Jeremiah, now in his 50s, observed men returning from battle with bodies broken and souls hollowed. Soldiers whispered about atrocities committed in the name of freedom. Yet in the towns, the deeper darkness persisted. Children vanished from the streets, women were coerced into silence, and the local clergy covered the scenes under a veneer of patriotism. Jeremiah's knowledge of the town's hidden mechanisms made him invaluable to those who knew how to read his expressions. Men of power sought him out, offering protection in exchange for information. But Jeremiah refused to betray the silent victims. He became a ghost within the town, attending public events, observing, recording, and disappearing before anyone could notice. One evening, Jeremiah followed a group of soldiers to a dilapidated farmhouse where the townspeople had hidden a group of children. What he discovered was not war casualties, but a system of child exploitation running parallel to the chaos of national conflict. The children were being trained under cruel oversight for reasons Jeremiah could not yet name. They were taught obedience, secrecy, and terror. Through the war, Jeremiah's longevity became increasingly uncanny. He was marked by no sickness, no bullet, no fever. Those around him began to whisper. Perhaps he had been touched by something unnatural. Jeremiah himself began to understand that he was living as a vessel for memory, an observer whose eyes were meant to outlive generations, to see what the town preferred to forget. By 1870, Jeremiah had begun wandering the surrounding forests. The woods were rumored to hide lost things, children, servants, and men who had angered the town. The trees seemed alive, whispering names that Jeremiah knew by heart. He found makeshift shrines made of bones and burnt cloth, symbols carved into tree trunks depicting pacts and rituals. One evening, Jeremiah stumbled upon a clearing where the town's elite gathered in secret. The air was thick with incense and fear, and chants echoed through the branches. Jeremiah observed silently as they conducted rites that merged old African traditions with distorted Christian symbolism. The participants wore masks, hiding expressions of devotion or despair. It was impossible to tell. Jeremiah realized the town's orphanages, families were bound to something older than themselves. They were guardians of a system that demanded sacrifice, secrecy, and complicity. Those who refused were disappeared, their fates whispered in the wind. He began to understand his own life as a countermeasure. He would live as witness, cataloging the rituals and abuses, recording the unspeakable. His memory, uncorrupted by time, became both a weapon and a curse. Jeremiah knew that in the woods, in the town, and in the hidden halls of power, the machinery of terror persisted, waiting for those who dared to see. By the 1880s, an illness spread through Ohio towns. Adults succumbed first, leaving children and the elderly behind. Jeremiah noticed patterns. Only the children of certain families survived, and only those untouched by the town's rituals. He realized the epidemic was manipulated, engineered to consolidate power and eliminate witnesses. Orphanages became overfilled, hospitals quieted their screams, and the clergy preached obedience as salvation. Jeremiah wandered these spaces, documenting what no one else dared acknowledge. He observed children who had survived ritualistic tests, their eyes hollow, their tongues trained to lie, and their memories stripped. He became known as the Old Watcher, a man whose longevity was both feared and revered. People whispered that he had seen the face of God or the face of a demon, but Jeremiah knew the truth. He had only seen humanity at its most cunning, cruel, and desperate. Jeremiah tracked the disappearance of entire families. Entire households would vanish in the night, leaving only a single token behind: a spoon, a bonnet, a carved figurine. No one spoke. Everyone looked away. Jeremiah documented their fate in cryptic notes hidden in attics, under floorboards, and inside hollowed furniture. The town's veneer of civility began to crumble. Whispers of curses, pacts, and ancient debts surfaced. The disappeared were rumored to have been taken to hidden chambers beneath churches, barns, and forests, or sold into shadow networks beyond Ohio. Jeremiah's role as witness became increasingly solitary. He was the only living record by the 1890s. Jeremiah observed that the town's rituals had become more brazen. Church services masked darker ceremonies, blessings turned into tests of obedience, hymns coded with instructions, communion wafers marking those who had transgressed invisible rules. Jeremiah's understanding of the hidden symbology grew. He could walk into any church and discern which members were complicit, which were victims, and which had become broken enforcers of the town's secret order. His notes became a library of horrors, symbols, names, dates, and locations. He had become more than witness. He was archivist, historian, and survivor of a town's moral rot. A traveling carnival arrived in the 1900s, and Jeremiah noticed familiar patterns. The performers were children, the sideshows masking exploitation and ritual. In the bright daylight, it appeared innocent. In the shadows, he saw chains, symbols, and silent suffering. Jeremiah followed the carnival at night, mapping the disappearances, observing the pacts made with desperate families. The town tolerated the carnival, just as it tolerated all its hidden atrocities, because acknowledging the truth would dissolve the fragile societal veneer. By 1910, Jeremiah discovered an unmarked cemetery. Graves bore no names, only symbols etched in careful secrecy. He realized these were the final resting places of the town's disappeared children, servants, dissenters, anyone who had broken the rules. The cemetery smelled of damp earth and forgotten sorrow. Jeremiah spent nights wandering among the graves, whispering the names he had catalogued over decades, keeping memory alive where the town had erased it. Industrialization arrived, and the town's factories brought new faces. Yet Jeremiah noticed the pattern persisted. Children in the mills, apprentices disappearing, and factory owners complicit in the same ancient rituals. Jeremiah infiltrated the factories, cataloging the machinery of control. The smoke from the chimneys carried the scent of fear, despair, and exploitation, a chemical perfume of the living and the dead. Jeremiah discovered a hidden section in the town's library. Dozens of records chronicled disappearances, pacts, and rituals, meticulously encoded to appear mundane. He realized the town had always preserved its secrets in plain sight. He spent years decoding the texts, connecting events, symbols, and names. Jeremiah's mind became a living library of horror. By the 1920s, a violent storm destroyed parts of the town. Jeremiah wandered the ruins, realizing some secrets had been exposed. People began whispering openly about disappearances, tactics, and ritualistic horrors, yet the town resisted true acknowledgement. Jeremiah understood that fear had become invisible, institutionalized, and self-perpetuating. Jeremiah returned to the original orphanage. Its walls bore the scars of decades of abuse and neglect. He discovered the last surviving children of the system, their memories fragmented, their voices silent. He recorded everything: the walls, the rituals, the whispers before the building was condemned and erased from maps. By 1930, the town had grown, modernized, yet the shadows persisted. Jeremiah walked the streets, noting subtle patterns where fear lingered. Who watched, who obeyed silently. The town's history was buried under concrete, asphalt, and polite smiles. Jeremiah remained the only witness, carrying the unbroken memory of horror across generations. By 1940, Jeremiah's age astounded neighbors. He looked frail yet sharp, mind intact. He realized that living so long was not a gift but a punishment. To see generations repeat sins, to witness the machinery of cruelty perpetuate, to carry memory when the world preferred forgetting. Jeremiah began writing a manuscript, hoping to leave a record for future generations. He encoded the history of disappearances, rituals, and pacts, warning that silence is complicity and memory is resistance. The manuscript was hidden in plain sight, like the town's secrets, awaiting discovery by those brave enough to confront history. Jeremiah Holloway died quietly in 1938 or perhaps later, records unclear. He had lived 126 years, survived countless horrors, and seen things no one else could. The town remembers him as a recluse, a curiosity, a myth, but his eyes had recorded everything: the vanished children, the silent priests, the corrupt elites, and the rituals older than memory. And in those eyes the truth remained. History is a living entity. Those who survive to witness it carry a burden beyond comprehension. Jeremiah's legacy is a warning. Evil thrives in silence, yet memory is indestructible. The screen fades to black. Only the faint echo of whispers remains.